I'm trying to think back. Any video that I've made for myself, we've never spent more than $500 on it. And I'm not saying that to be like, that's cheap or we don't spend money. It's like, you can make great videos without blowing your budget. And I think that you'll continue to see like these big artists do these elaborate music videos and put them out and try to get like publicity plays and all that kind of stuff. And for what reason, because the things that I think actually even at the highest level get the most attention are like when these big artists do great videos. I think back to one that I think Chris Stapleton and Justin Timberlake filmed that was like very fan finder-esque in like a French abandoned warehouse or something. And that video, everyone loves it. Like, oh my gosh, look at the raw talent. There's tons of coverage on it. And I'm sure that there was a budget for that, but it wasn't a music video. It was a one-take thing, and like it was well produced. But that's what I'm saying. I think that the idea of like, hey, I need to get my singles coming out, look at my music video. If it's not, it should be totally dead by the end of 2022.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast, brought to you by Indiepreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 201. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me is my awesome co-host, Ed Isola. Ed, happy almost New Year, dude.
Happy almost New Year, my friend. It's been a good year, I would say. It's been a great year.
It has been a great year, and I'm pretty. It's been an interesting year, and I don't think I could think of a better way to have our 201st episode than by bidding sayonara to 2021. I'm pretty pumped to just go through in this episode some of the things that we think might be our predictions about music marketing and music business and the music tech space. And not only predictions, but I'm curious about some of the things that you're hopeful for in 2022 as we go into a new year. So I think this will be a fun kind of wrap-up episode to close 2021 on a super high note for the Indie Nation.
Yeah, it's fun because this is kind of like the episode where we get to just speculate on what we think is going to happen and kind of give our unfiltered opinions on the good, the bad, the potential, like you said, the hopeful for next year. So I'm excited to dive into it.
Yeah, me too. I think it's interesting. I listened back to our wrap up 2020 episode before we jumped on to record here, just to hear some of the predictions that I had mentioned on that episode. And it's interesting. I'll touch on some of those in a minute, but there was one in particular that actually ended up being related to one of my predictions for this year. So let's kick it off, man. What do you think? What's your first kind of prediction for where music marketing is going in 2022?
Well, I think the first one it's kind of a safe play, but I think that we're going to see the impact of texting, especially with younger fans, expand pretty rapidly. I'm seeing across the board for myself and for a couple of IndieX clients that we work with, we've started working in texting apps, and we've touched on this a little bit in past episodes, but we've started working in texting apps, and there's way more engagement with that 15 to 25 crowd. It's still kind of to be seen on how it plays out long term, but I think that it's almost one of those things we're meeting people where they want to be met. And I don't think it's going to replace email. And that's not what I'm trying to say. I think it's going to be side by side with email, where you use both of those tools together for tour announcements or merch announcements. And now your reach is doubled because you're probably hitting people that want text messages. You're hitting people that wanted emails. So I think that the continued growth and implementation of text in the buddy system and marketing is going to help amplify what we are already doing pretty greatly.
Yeah, that's a good one for sure. I think we've seen greater adoption of text marketing among creatives throughout 2021. So I can only imagine that it's going to continue into 2022. And it's been especially interesting to see more and more platforms that haven't been necessarily like SMS focused start to adopt features of it more and more. I mean, like even autoresponders, email marketing platforms like Drip is getting texting into their platform, which we've talked about before on previous episodes. But I think even beyond that, like thinking about the intersection of text marketing and e-commerce and how that all plays in, and texting and touring and tour marketing. A lot of our clients at IndieX have used text marketing for lead magnets for sure, and for getting people signed up to a list, but also things like giveaways and fan experiences. Yeah, I definitely agree. It's really interesting to talk about how it kind of provides some horizontal scale for artists to allow them to hit or market to segments of their fans that might not be hanging out in email, or might not be, that's not really the place that they want to be talking with you. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting point.
It's really interesting to me because even early on, like ManyChat, that wasn't something that I ever really used. And I know a lot of people had great success with it, but ManyChat was never something that I seemed to be able to get the 502's fan base involved in. So it's pretty crazy to see like people are super involved with texting now. They're involved with email. And not only for us, but for, like I said, other IndieX clients, it's like you said, it's this horizontal kind of expansion that's been really interesting to watch on something that I was initially skeptical of, that I think as more people realize, like, okay, look, if I have the capacity to manage my email list and manage a text list, I'm reaching more people, because I'm not seeing that many duplicates on our text list versus our email list. It's not like it's the same people on both. It's actually a different audience on each platform. So I would say this, I think that it is a little bit of a further down the buddy system type thing. Like, emails are still the initial step that I would recommend. But when you start to have a little bit of a fan base, I think that implementing this texting where you can just blast out this information, like, it's encouraging to me because it's like allowing for quick growth on the accounts that I'm working with. And I think it'll be really cool long term.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. One thing that you said that kind of struck me there is about where it plays into the buddy system, the customer journey, where fans are in relationship with you as an artist, how it might be a little bit deeper. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because of there being some social credibility or some social proof around where you are as an artist, in that fans would want to text with you at a certain level?
I think so, but also, like, I think that we've had this little spike before that. I think people just want to talk to the artist. I think it comes down to the same principle as why is the album launch cool? It's like people want to talk to people that they like with music. So if you're running something where you have top of funnel awareness, and even if it's small top of funnel, if somebody knows about you and you're their favorite artist, that's where texting with you is really valuable. In my mind, it's a glorified DM that you can kind of control and send out blast text messages more so. And I didn't think this previously, but I don't think now that texting really changes the buddy system. I think it just kind of adds to it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I hear you there. That's cool though. It's encouraging. Like, the barrier to entry isn't like you have to be famous or have people like really clamoring to get your phone number or something like that. It's just a matter of access to something that you already, that fans like. It's access to wanting to be a little bit deeper involved into what it is that you're doing creatively. It's not some pedestal or some status kind of symbol.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like people have messaged artists that we work with like, wow, that's so cool. I can't believe I'm talking to you. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. So like you said, there's no pedestal. It's just like another avenue to pull people into your ecosystem, talk to them, get to know them, just like everything else in the buddy system. So that's my prediction number one. What would you like to serve up for your first prediction of 2022?
So my first prediction for 2022, and this is probably going to be somewhat obvious, I would say, but maybe not. We talked about this a little bit in our hot seat sort of Q&A episodes that we did in the past 2 weeks. Something that I think is going to continue to be a trend throughout 2022 is going to be sort of the policies, implementation of more policies that result in a privacy first kind of internet. We've seen the beginnings of that long before iOS 14 with things like GDPR and later then CCPA in California, which were, privacy protection policies for marketing online. But we really saw it kind of reach a tipping point, I think, with Apple and iOS 14 and all of the effects that had on the advertising ecosystem and Facebook ads. And then we saw more of it with iOS 15 towards the fall of this year, and how that's starting to impact email marketing and the things that it's doing related to that. And I think really, we talked about this on the podcast episode last week, I think it was, like I said, where we talked about this kind of just being the tip of the iceberg. And it's not necessarily like the end of the world or anything like that, but it is a change. And as smart music marketers, there are going to be things that we're going to have to do to adapt to that. And what that's going to look like is still kind of up in the air. I think one thing we are going to see in 2022 is platforms working from the tech perspective to make up for that. Facebook's modeling, for example, hopefully will continue to get more and more refined so that the statistical modeling on opted out users will get better so that our reporting isn't so bad. Hopefully, being able to work with the platforms to kind of ride the wave of these changes will result in an internet that, from a data privacy perspective, people feel is cool and comfortable, but also from a marketing perspective is good for us. But I do think we're going to see more of that. I mean, Google had announced a few years ago that in 2022, it was going to do away with third-party cookies in 2022. Now it's been pushed to 2023. I believe that was the last thing they said about it. But yeah, I think we're going to continue to see more of that, and that's just going to be a reality that we're going to have to grapple with.
It's funny because that was a bullet point that I had also had written down, but it's like I feel like at this point we are operating. We being like me and you and IndieX and people inside Indiepreneur, I feel like we're operating under the assumption that, all right, Facebook tracking is terrible. Like we're not using it, like I don't necessarily go in anymore and see, okay, what does Facebook say my cost per lead is? I feel like we have kind of already adapted this. Let me go pull my ad spend divided by, my number of leads from that Facebook specific form or check the UTMs. And I think on top of what you were saying, where it's like, okay, this is probably going to get worse and worse, I think that we'll also see on the flip side, the positive side of it, I would hope that we'll see indies kind of start to adapt before the issue comes to them. If we're saying, okay, this is going to get worse, the tracking is going to get worse, you're not going to be able to see reporting well, like hopefully people preemptively pick up on that and say, okay, well now I can kind of do this little tracking and start to see how things are going. So I think that we'll see that kind of start to roll out where people are developing their own system. But yeah, it's funny because to me that's I'm just assuming at this point it's going to be like non-functional and let's use it for ad spend and let's do our tracking elsewhere.
On one hand, I totally agree with you. Like the sooner that we embrace the change and recognize that our habits and our thinking and our systems are going to have to be updated, knowing that that's the case rather than trying to deal with it when the problem comes up. Meaning like, when all of a sudden you're seeing half the amount of leads or something in Facebook ads reporting. Like if you're ahead of that and that that's what it's going to look like, then it's not really something to think about. Your CRM or your store or whatever it is that is kind of the end point becomes your source of truth. I think we've talked about that before on the show as well. But I think, like you said, like the sooner that we all kind of adapt to that and approach marketing that way, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're afraid of what we are calling impending worse and worse of Facebook tracking and all that stuff, it's a good time to kind of make your own prediction for 2022 and get ahead of the curve, so to speak. And it's kind of a good time to do it if you want to start doing your own tracking where like, while there's still some semblance of tracking inside Facebook, you can get some kind of accurate guess, On that note, I think the other thing too is that I'll be very curious because I think we'll see people develop like some creative ways to track that maybe we're not thinking of. We've talked a lot about like looking at the entire ecosystem or like I just said, tracking through a form, but I think we'll see some creative initiatives that are like, okay, wait, what if we track it this way? And this is what that tells us that, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I will be pleasantly surprised, I think.
Yeah, I think one thing worth saying here is getting creative about the systems that you build to kind of approach things in this way will get easier, I think. I think they will get easier as more tech and software solutions come up to solve these problems. And also, I do think that Facebook I don't think it's going to get worse necessarily. I'm hoping that it actually gets better, that that their statistical modeling gets better, and that we can really start to see some correlation as, the data sort of rebuilds back up over time, just in a different kind of medium. But that's just, a hope right now. But I think as solutions come from all angles, both from inside of platforms like advertising platforms, or from outside, whether it be through, creative things that autoresponders like Drip are putting together, or the back end of Shopify. I think as those things start to come out, it's just a matter of adapting them into your own workflow. And then, you've got a system that specifically works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one kind of hopeful piece of that is that I think that this kind of uncertain terrain will force people to know their fans and know their list even better. So I think it will kind of maybe unintentionally help drive deeper artist connection with their fans, because you got to know what's going on if you're not able to track it up front.
Dude, yeah, spot on. Like with iOS 15, for example, and the impact that it's looking to have on email marketing. Like you said, like now is a good time to, where you have some clean benchmark of what's going on your list, for example. Now is a good time to, make pivots to the segments that you've got in your email marketing provider, so that like an active segment isn't based on open rates anymore, but you can compare what that currently looks like. It might be customers in the past 6 months. It might be people who visited a website in the past 6 months. It might be people who clicked on a link in an email in the past 6 months, any of that kind of stuff. People who just recently subscribed. Like if that becomes your active segment and you're not looking at opens anymore, right now it's early enough that you can take that segment and compare it to one that has open rates and say, okay, like here's what I'm working with before the open rates start to get super inflated because of the kind of backhanded opening that's going to be happening on Apple's end from the database side. So before that starts happening, you can compare the two and kind of get like a level of where you're at. I think that that's really important right now.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. So there's a sliver of light of hope for the future. So get in there, get your information sorted, and get a better representation of where you're at. So when things change, you can also measure how you're actually changing and not over or underestimate.
Yeah, most definitely.
I think my next prediction for 2022 is that more and more, as we've seen over the last couple of years, I think we will continue to see that video creative, but also great video creative, is more and more important. We've kind of seen it developing, like even with the Fan Finder early on, that was important. And now we've got TikTok, we've got Reels. We're seeing better video content do better on Instagram and Facebook. So I think that the importance on video content is going to just continue to go up, and it's going to also force artists to adapt and learn how to create that good video content while also doing it on a pretty affordable level. Because I think that what's going to be important here too is like good content that's video based, that also is easy to reproduce but looks legitimate. So I think that's kind of an interesting take, is that everyone's going to have to figure out how to produce great video content. And if you're not, you probably will struggle if you're relying on just press photos or just graphics, that kind of thing.
That's interesting too, dude. I had that on my list as well. Like the spread of videos kind of influence online has definitely gotten bigger, with TikTok, really coming as like a big heavy hitting player in the social sphere, 100%. But also, earlier this year, I think it was Instagram's CEO went on record and said, like, we're not really just a photo sharing platform. Like video is kind of our thing. And I think that that's super indicative of kind of what you're saying here. Like we're seeing video becoming more and more important in different places. And the way that you really tap into that as a creative is by knowing, what's native to this platform, what are people used to, and what do they like to experience in the place that they're watching. So, how do I make reels that are meant for Instagram Reels? How do I make TikTok videos that are meant for TikTok? And how do I do it in a way that like supports my efforts in marketing my music? I think that's going to be a question that artists have to grapple with more and more. Same thing goes for Facebook or whatever platform you're on. Like, how do you create the content that really resonates with people to stand out of the noise? I think we're reaching a place now. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say this. Like, I think we're reaching a place now when it comes to long form content. For example, like a music video fan finder ad on Facebook. It's non-negotiable now that those videos are great and native and that they catch people's attention with strong pattern interrupts and good performances and high quality music and good looking video. Does it have to be, shot with a red camera or a super expensive, piece of glass? No, not necessarily. I think we're kind of moving past the days where you could get away easily with kind of like a lackluster performance video that is shot on a phone. Like, it's really got to be something that if you're shooting it on a phone, it should be something that people are like, and I'm talking about long form content here, don't misunderstand. But when it comes to like something that you would use as a music video and try to get like, rack up as many deep video viewers as you can. If you're using a phone for it, the content of that video has to be something that's like, somebody stopped dead in their tracks to pull their phone out and record this. That's what the quality level of the content has to be like.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And here's like maybe a prediction or hot take based off what you just said, is that whether or not the traditional larger music industry wants to believe it, I think that, by the end of 2022, I think that traditional music videos, those well shot $5,000 to $7,000 video, I think those will be obsolete.
Oh, bump up that budget, bump it up,
yeah.
up. Yeah.
Whatever the budget is, I think that it's obsolete, and I think that things like Reels, TikTok, the fan finder, all that stuff is proving like you don't need that. You don't need that at all. I'm trying to think back, any video that I've made for myself, we've never spent more than $500 on it. And I'm not saying that to be like, that's cheap or we don't spend money. It's like, you can make great videos without blowing your budget. And I think that you'll continue to see like these big artists do these elaborate music videos and put them out and try to get like publicity plays and all that kind of stuff. And for what reason, because the things that I think actually even at the highest level get the most attention are like, when these big artists do great videos. I think back to one that I think Chris Stapleton and Justin Timberlake filmed that was like very fan finder-esque in like a French abandoned warehouse or something. And that video, everyone loves it. Like, oh my gosh, look at the raw talent. There's tons of coverage on it. And I'm sure that there was a budget for that, but it wasn't a music video. It was a one-take thing, and like it was well produced, but that's what I'm saying. I think that the idea of like, hey, I need to get my singles coming out, look at my music video. If it's not, it should be totally dead by the end of 2022.
That is a hot take indeed. That the music video, as it's been known, will be dead in 2022. We're going to have to revisit that one. I didn't think we were going here. You went full nuclear, man.
I wasn't thinking about it until you said it. And I was like, what? It serves no purpose. It serves no purpose. Anytime I've considered it, it's like, okay, well, what are we going to do with that? Like nothing.
Well, to your point, like I've seen videos that have gone multiple times viral with millions and millions of views on them that were shot with a phone and did have that like, oh shit, pulling out my phone to record this quality, even though it was, orchestrated and scripted and meant to be that way. I've seen that from bands that like have done really, really well. And most, they're not household names, but they've created these videos that have helped them gather fans or help fans find them in a way that like, a $20,000 or a $100,000 music video isn't doing for a lot of other artists. Like your artsy project with a big narrative and, breaks in between the music. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It has its place. But I think its place is getting further and further pushed away from discovery and more into like consumption by existing fans, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good clarifying point. The music video is like, it doesn't serve for top of funnel anymore. At that point, you're just spending tons of money for your existing fans and they probably don't care that much about it. But yeah, anything with a plot line you probably don't need a music video with a plot line in 2022.
It's so interesting. Like I'm not gonna lie to you. Like throughout I would say the past 2 years, every time a music video comes out from an artist that my girlfriend and I like, she'll be like, "Oh, do you want to watch the video with me?" And like, we'll watch the video, but like rarely do I ever care. Like really. And these are mostly bands and artists that I really love, but like, I don't care about the music video. And these are bands and people that I'm a fan of. So like, what does that say? You know?
The one exception to the rule that I can think of is if you do such a good job that it's a cultural moment that everyone has to stop and watch. Example, Taylor Swift's All Too Well video, right? Like that would probably be the one thing that people would point to with what I just said and say, well, that was like everybody watched that, 10-minute, 15-minute film, whatever it was. And it's like, yeah, but that was like an event, and she was getting everybody to watch it. It was more of a short film.
For sure, yeah. There's also the playing field difference is like, this is Taylor Swift, and if she ran that, 15 years ago as a in a hypothetical world where there was advertising like we have now online, if she ran that as a video ad, like no one would care.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean that actually speaks to the point we just said, which was like that goes into the core of existing fan base versus top of funnel. And the other thing too, just on this that I thought that you said that was really, really insightful and to me important to underline was that you have to create these videos that support your content. So just because we're saying, hey, I think that video content is going to be more and more important than ever, that doesn't mean like go out and film yourself doing like jackass pranks, and like see if that supports your music career. It's like, no, do things that are music centric that help your career but are great.
We could do a whole episode on this topic. We probably will.
Yeah.
In 2022, I feel like we could really deep dive into this some more. But yeah, I agree. Like overall, I think we're moving into a place where just like the internet is also going to be privacy first, it's also going to be content first, like especially for creatives, like the creatives that make the type of video content and intersperse it with their music and intersperse it with their, with their products and their offers and the experience that they're giving to their fans. The more that you can do that as the world, turns into another year and another year after that, like those are going to be the ones that win the privacy war, because on platform, if you get people consuming your content and they're digging it and it's creating a cultural moment, eventually you're going to get them to a place where you can collect that first party data and it's something you own. And you can do that faster by creating moments for your fans that or potential fans that actually suck them in.
Absolutely. Agreed 100%. Hit us with your number 2, Mr. Jack.
My next prediction, I think, is going to be, and this one is interesting because it goes off of, kind of piggybacks off of something that we had talked about on last year's predictions episode. And something I had seen and kind of predicted for 2021 was that live streaming was going to become super saturated to the point where the barrier to entry to create a monetizable live stream was going to be harder and harder, a bigger barrier to entry. And I think we did start to see that. But what we also continued to see in 2021, which I think we're going to see go a few big steps further in 2022, is the continuation of hybrid events, virtual events. Not only is that going to be adopted in, the music business or the entertainment industry, but also just in general. In-person events are being moved into a place where, there's an in-person element and there's a virtual element to give people choice. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. Like I think back to April 2020 when Travis Scott did his Fortnite concert. And that was kind of one of those first moments where it was like, oh, this is a virtual event in a game and there's, virtual products being sold and there's a lot of money being made from this. And we started to see more of that in 2021. Things like Roblox, 21 Pilots did a show within the Roblox world. Poppy, who is a kind of weird crossover metal pop singer artist, she did one as well. And I think that's really interesting. Decentraland did a festival inside of a virtual world in the metaverse. So I think that's one thing that we're going to start to see more and more of. And it start to become especially in places where fans are already hanging out or they're interested. Like Fortnite was a good example of like, there are people already here. I'm a creative and I'm going to make something cool. And will this be more accessible to artists that have the resources to do it? Yeah, absolutely. But I do think we're going to start to see it become a little bit more democratized.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like we've already seen the oversaturation of live streaming. Like, you know, I feel like we hit that like 6 months ago.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah. And so I think like your prediction is like, we're going to see people adapt and become better at what they're doing and make cooler events for their fans. It's like nobody wants to see a live stream at this point anymore. So you better do better than that, and you better make it cool. And I just think that's, as a fan, I think that's super exciting, because it's like, oh man, what could I potentially be involved in, whether it's online, like VR stuff. I mean, how sick would it be if like there was a at-home concert where you just, you purchased a ticket and it came with a whole bundle of stuff and it was shipped to your place, and then you log in, it's VR and you have all these like props or something. I don't know. But it'd be really cool to see people really innovate and make it exciting. So I think that's like a really cool prediction, and one that probably puts a little bit of the hope that you were talking about in for 2022, that like cool things are coming, and not only from it, like you said, it'll be easier for people with the means to do something like that. But I think there's also the ability for these mixed medium live events to take place, even for indie artists. I mean, I think about like, I think Gracie did the box, right? Where she was sending stuff out for her album launch, and it's like, oh, buy this box. It comes with, candle for this song and this for that song. And it's like, that's really cool. That's a mixed medium live event that you can do. And it's not, it doesn't cost you thousands of dollars to set up. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, as always, to just innovate on whatever you're doing with your fans and just make it cool.
I think that's really where ideas like concerts and festivals in the metaverse or in virtual kind of spaces, I think that's why it's going to become more and more of a thing. And we're going to see more of it in 2022, is because right now it's an engagement play. It's how do I keep my fans engaged? How do I give them an experience of something that's new and unique? And I think that's really what it represents right now. I think the future of it goes into even more like the crossover between that and monetization and commerce and digital products. Like I said, like we saw with Travis Scott, like he was selling virtual merch at this Fortnite event. I think we're going to be seeing more and more of that like further down the line, I think. But right now, like primarily, I think where it lives in a lot of ways, and where it's going to become more accessible for indies, is going to be in the space of coming up with cool ways to engage your fans, like you said.
Yeah. And something else I was just thinking is like, there are, as great as they are, there are a lot of limitations on live concerts. One of them being you can only access them from that location. And it's very taxing on the musician to, these big artists go around and do it for a month, 2 months, whatever. So it's exciting to kind of see, how do people say like, those are problems with touring? How do we make them better? And see what people come up with.
Yeah, that's true. That's an interesting point too. Is like, is this a remedy or a proposal of a solution for some of the wear and tear that comes with a life on the road? That's a really interesting point. To that, like another prediction that I had for 2022, which we kind of talked about in one of the Q&A episodes that just went by, and I think we're going to be talking more about this in 2022. But related to virtual events, I think we're going to start to see more and more of a connection between the music industry and creatives and commerce when it comes to Web3 and the integration with blockchain technology and NFTs, and where all of those things overlap with virtual events could be interesting as well. And I think we're going to start to see more of that. Like I said, like Decentraland, for example, which is a virtual world that has a blockchain element to it, a cryptocurrency element to it. And I think we're going to start to see more of that start to happen. And it's just going to be like the beginning steps of hopefully what is like a Web3 sort of tiptoeing for the music industry and for creatives. I mean, we're seeing people do really, really cool stuff already in that space. So it's only a matter of time where it starts to open up even more.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time, I think, for like innovation and deciding like I'm not going to allow whatever the traditional restraints have been. I'm going to see what I can come up with. And I think it's very exciting for creatives to be able to just kind of flex that muscle and say like, okay, anything I could dream up, I could probably make it happen. How do I make it happen?
Yeah, that's so good. Because I especially think that's true because of like in the NFT space, like that could allow, or maybe starting to allow, or maybe we'll see it allow a redefining of how digital products work for artists and what value they have. And I think that is exciting and wild, and I have no idea what it's going to look like, but I think we're going to start to see more people kind of taking the reins with it and making it their own. And that's really what's cool about like the idea of Web3, I think, is that it's kind of like the Wild Wild West or super uncharted territory. There isn't a rule book to follow. It's just you go in and you learn and you find people that are like-minded and you start getting into discussions about what could be, and you try to take that creative vision and turn it into something. I feel like I'm getting on a Web3 platform, which I don't want to do. But yeah, I think you said it really well.
Web3 endorsed by Jack. No, but speaking of uncharted territory, my third and final prediction is that I think we're going to see a wider adoption of tech inside indies toolkits. The one that comes to mind for me is that I think we're going to see people using these online AI copywriting bots, either for full copywriting or at least for helping create avatars, helping brainstorm angles, and really helping make copy and creative that's better suited to the target audience. I think that that's something that people aren't really using. It's starting to kind of roll out. But I think that'll be a really interesting way to see how people include this AI stuff, which is very legitimate and very like incredible, honestly, while also maintaining their artistry and their sense of like personal connection. But I think people are going to be forced to adapt and start to include that because it's such a great tool.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of good tools out there that are based on AI for things like copywriting. But I think we're going to see, even going a step beyond that, like I think we're going to start to see more AI driven tools that maybe aren't necessarily related to copywriting. Like we might see more AI driven things related to music production. We might see more AI driven tools when it comes to songwriting. I certainly think we'll see more AI driven or machine learning driven opportunities in the advertising space for sure. I think that's going to just be part of the course for figuring out or navigating the privacy waters at this point. But yeah, I think the copywriting tools that are driven by AI are really, really cool. I think they present a good opportunity for artists who, on one hand, you know, if you're trying to learn, there's nothing like opening up like great copy and reading it and learning it. But also this kind of helps to provide a context in which you can put your own message out there and then look and see what's spit out and then make edits based on what you see fit, what you think the medium needs or what you think the audience needs or needs to hear. So yeah, I think that that's definitely an interesting idea. On a tech note, and this is my final prediction, and it's more of a hope. I am very, very hopeful that in 2022, and I'm putting this out into the universe right now, that we'll start to see Spotify and its data backend open up a little bit more for us to be able to see kind of what's going on under the hood, maybe get a little bit more clarity when it comes to tracking where our traffic is coming from and what's converting. And I think the Shopify integration with Spotify, while not necessarily related to data, I think that was a step in a really positive direction where we might start to see like a closed loop when it comes to a sales funnel or a customer journey where people can purchase products directly through the platform like this and go over to Shopify, and then you own the data. I was really encouraged by that, even though it's still like in its infancy and its baby stages. And we'll link to some notes on that in the show notes if you're not familiar with the Shopify Spotify integration. But I would love to see further opening up on the data side of things. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be incredible, especially given all the Spotify ads that we've been running and testing from various platforms. I mean, even something as simple as saying like this listener came from this platform, that would be really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Like talking about TikTok ads, like we've been testing TikTok ads a little bit at the IndieX agency, and it's been really interesting to see how it's played out. And I'm actually really interested to see how that platform evolves as an advertising medium in 2022 also. I think it will probably become more integrated with profiles, and creators will be able to do different things. You know, we saw that start to happen with Spark ads, and now with, you know, some retargeting opportunities. I hope we start to see more of that. But exactly like you said, when you're driving traffic from multiple places, whether it's organic or paid, knowing what's happening on the back end from a streaming perspective and a following perspective, it's such a critical dark spot, a black hole, whatever you want to call it. I would love to see that go away in the new year.
Yeah. I mean, and to build on that, like, I guess I would be hopeful if we do start to see inside Spotify's back end. I would be hopeful that we can then kind of start to build out some kind of closed loop system that's a little bit more predictable, you know, instead of just like slapping up a text number on the canvas on the backdrop of a song. It's like, you know, that would be really cool to see too. Not only hoping to see inside what the back end looks like, but hoping to be able to build out a system to actually pull in all these listeners from Spotify, because that to me has been the biggest downfall. Is that, okay, great, I'm getting streams, I'm getting listeners, I can't contact them. They don't know I'm coming on tour. They don't know I'm doing this stuff. So
Spotify's native retargeting ads are not good.
Yeah, like, not good at all. Based off what you said, that would be my hope for 2022, is that we can see and we can build based off of what we see.
I love that. Yeah, we'll see if that one comes true. I waver back and forth on whether I'm hopeful that will happen. But like I said, I think the Shopify integration was like a step in, like a baby step in the right direction. So I guess we'll see what comes next. I'm hopeful. These are all like really exciting in general, like exciting things. Like even the privacy side, I think is super exciting, because what it does do is all of it kind of drives innovation and creativity and ways that you have to adapt and new things that you have to create, new types of content. I think all of that, like creatives, you know, artists, musicians, filmmakers, entertainers, comedians, like wherever you kind of live in the entertainment world, I think we are the people who are well suited to kind of navigate all of this, the good and the bad, because of the creative inclinations that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's way more reasons to be excited and encouraged for 2022 than to be like pessimistic about it. So it's just a good time. It's a good time to be a creative. It's a great time to be an independent creative. And the world is kind of everybody's oyster, so to speak. It's exciting.
Yeah, that is so true, man. What a great way to wrap up 2021. I hope all of you have a super, super happy and a super safe new year, and we'll see you in 2022. And speaking of which, if any of these changes coming in 2022, if you're looking ahead at your music business and you're thinking to yourself that you're looking to bring on a team or you need some help with your digital marketing, I just want to share as we wrap up the episode that we're going to be opening up some slots at the IndieX agency going into 2022. So if you are looking to build your team and you're in a place where you've got a fan base that you've already started to monetize and you're looking to scale that up, or if you've got a fan base that you're just looking to monetize maybe for the first time, talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. We'll leave a link in the show notes to the IndieX app so you can check it out. There's a quick application, gives us some details on what's going on in your music career, whether you've got an album launch coming up, or you're launching a single sometime in 2022, or you've got a merch drop. We'd love to hear about what you've got going on in your world as we open up some new slots at the agency to work with folks like Ed and myself and the rest of our team. We'd love to talk to creative artists who are doing cool things. So if any of that sounds like it fits you, we'd love to hear from you. But until next time, we're going to take a little break, and then we'll see you guys in 2022 next time on Creative Juice. Peace out, Indies. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, guys.